Welcome to Spirit School. I'm Danielle Sarank, a medium and spiritual mentor and storyteller with over a decade experience, here to guide you through the profound intersections of spirituality, healing, and self-discovery. Spirit School is more than a podcast. It's a sanctuary, a place where you can connect with the wisdom of the unseen world, explore the depths of your own soul, and uncover the boundless life force energy within. Whether you're stepping into your spiritual gifts, navigating a healing journey, or seeking tools for a life filled with intention and meaning, you belong here. In each episode is a beacon of light, blending heartfelt stories, practical teachings, and reflections from my own path. Together, we'll celebrate the magic in the mundane and discover the extraordinary in everyday moments. Through Spirit School, we co-create a world where hope thrives, inspiration uplifts, and the power of spirit is undeniable. Welcome to Spirit School. Let's continue this journey of light and transformation together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spirit School. I feel like a whole new person joining you here today. I just went on a wild adventure this summer filming the first season of my TV show, and I learned so much. I experienced so much. I am really excited to dip back into the podcasting sphere. And I wanted to start this podcast episode just sharing with you one of the first teachings and experiences I had through the filming of this TV show, which is around, reflecting how before the show experience, how isolating I was, how solo I was, how I was podcasting solo and making business decisions by myself and spending all day at HQ by myself. And I didn't realize how lonely I was until I surrounded myself around these incredible creatives and people who are like masters in their craft. And I really felt like through my summer experience and being with people that my nervous system was healing. And that this like hole that I didn't even really know existed because I had been operating within it for so long was there. And so when I started thinking about like, how do I want to live my life moving forward? How do I want to spend my days and time? I love podcasting, and I haven't been consistent with it for a little while because when you're all by yourself all the time and you get in front of a mic, sometimes you can draw a bit of a blank. So I know that I have a lot of personality to share. I have a lot of insights to share, and I no longer want to live an isolated, lonely life. So I was thinking about the podcast and how I wanted to reinvigorate, calling this a season 3. And I really wanted to play with the idea of having a podcast co-host with me, somebody who knows me really well, somebody who I think is incredibly intelligent and is a perspective enhancer for me, can also often check me when I've stepped off the path a little bit. This is somebody who, I trust. I trust their opinion. I trust their perspectives. I trust their integrity. I trust their energy. And so for the next little while, we are going to be experimenting with the podcast and having some fun with it. And I wanted to introduce to you a podcast co-host who I have no other way to introduce because that's going to be part of our first story. But she means a lot to me, and she has been with me for a long time, and she has witnessed me from my kitchen table all the way to where I am here today. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Danielle Baker, also known as the other Danielle. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for the incredible welcome. I think it's been 5 years now. Has it?
Over 5 years.
5.5 years. Yeah. It's wild. And truly from your kitchen table to where you're standing now has been an incredible journey.
Yeah, I think so too. And I love having people around me still who knew me back then, who helped keep me grounded. And like I say, as we share more about maybe how we connected, which really leads into our topic today, which is around integrity in the spiritual space. I might get you to kind of share the experience about how all of this unfolded and where we find ourselves today in a second here. But what I wanted to start with first is, in preparation for this first podcast topic, I actually hit up the podcast spheres to see what existed out there as far as this conversation. I could not find a single female-led podcast episode on the topic of integrity. All I could find was ministers, male ministers, and like kind of like Tony Robbins type bros. So I think that this topic is absolutely needed. And yeah, I just wanted to start with that.
I think that is incredibly accurate, and I want to say I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. I think it is very easy to look at the spiritual world, especially when it comes to mediumship, where there's so much female involvement, both from the mediumship side of things, but also from the client and the sitter side of things. It's so easy for very often, white men to tell us what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and override our own intuition, whether as a medium or a sitter. So I'm not incredibly surprised that is who are currently leading the conversations around integrity in spiritual space.
Yeah, I mean, just integrity as a whole. I just put in the word integrity. So women who are listening out there, if you have a podcast episode on integrity, please work on your SEO, or we just need to like flood the SEO gates around this topic and bring more female voices into it. So I'm really excited about that. Now, as always, I like to engage the audience in the podcast topic. So I did put in my Instagram stories yesterday, like when it comes to integrity in the spiritual space, what are you interested in as far as topics? And only one person commented, which is fine. That's typical. Whenever I'm talking about a program, Instagram will squish your reach down to like nothing. So that's what happens. I usually get like close to 1,000. And anytime I talk about anything I'm selling, it's like less than 100. It's absolutely crazy. So the one question and topic that came through was around boundaries in client care. Boundaries with clients. So I thought that this was a good place to start because it could also get you to maybe introduce your experience into my world, how we got to where we are now, because I think it is a good example and a good case study of integrity in the spiritual space. I mean, we're still here 5.5 years later together. We've been through some things. We've seen each other through some things, and we hold dual roles in each other's lives, more than dual roles. So maybe as a way to kind of like introduce yourself a bit more, talk about like, how did we get to where we are today? And how did we stay within integrity with one another along the way?
It's definitely, when you say dual roles in each other's lives, or more than dual roles in each other's lives, it's so true. I mean, I think somewhere in your background where we're currently chatting is a picture of my daughter with you. You're her auntie. I
don't have pictures of my own kids in my office, by the way. I'm just telling you that. Go on.
Well, she is very cute. Don't get me wrong, your kids are very cute also. But this was where I started as your client. So I went from your client to your employee to friends to family, essentially. And if I'm not overstepping by saying that, but my first connection with you was I had my naturopath at the time said, you have to go and see this medium. I went to see her, and it was like 10 sessions of counseling in one session, and she felt that I would really, my physical health would be incredibly served by that experience. And I remember reaching out or looking online and not being able to get a spot with you, and so the closest I could get at first was a mentorship spot, so I took it. That was the first opening, and I thought, well, I just want to be in this person's realm, if nothing else, because this is being so highly recommended to me. And so we had our mentorship session first, and then had a reading. And I think that one, if we want to get into boundaries right away, you held that boundary. You knew what I was looking for. You knew that I was really excited to have a mediumship reading, but you held a boundary that served your energy. And that was, like, I look back now, and as working myself now in tarot readings and holding that energy for other people, and being careful not to go into energy sickness, I think back to that time often. You were very clear, and you used actually that as a lesson. If you want to go in a bit to why you held mentorship sessions separately from mediumship sessions, I think that would be a great place to talk about boundaries.
Yeah, no, thank you for reflecting that back. And you're right. That is exactly how we started. The truth is, mediumship and mentoring require two different energy inputs and outputs for me. I hold space very differently when I'm working with somebody whose grief is in my hands versus somebody's empowerment in my hands. There's two different ways to kind of hold space. One requires a lot more of me, mind, body, spirit, emotional body. The other one is easier for me because I'm just sharing with you what I know and responding to your very needs. So the intensity is very different. The outcome's very different. With mediumship, you'll probably see me once. Right? With mentorship, it's an ongoing relationship building experience. Now, a lot of people who do get readings with me do probably end up in mentorship. That's kind of how spirit has put me to work. But when I look at, what is possible for me to actually achieve while still being a mom, while still wanting to have a life, I had to look at how many readings per week versus how many mentorships I could do per week. Now, I haven't done one-on-one mentorship for 3 years. Can you believe that? Isn't that crazy? And that wasn't even an intentional thing. But I don't know how I could go back to it with the capacity that I have now, like being able to hold space for groups of 150 plus, right? But yeah, it's a capacity thing. It's always around capacity and being ethical with my energy. It's never been about the bottom dollar. It's knowing what the math has to be, knowing what the energy math has to be, where's the middle ground. Now, one of the biggest teachings I've had around this is trying not to make plans for the future based off of your healthiest and happiest version of self. Right? I would be oh my God, I have so much energy. I'm just going to serve, book in 20 readings. But Danielle, of February is seasonal defect disorder. It's we're over winter. The capacity is just different. So this balance is always a moving target. It's always evolving, but it's always based off of energy ethics.
And it also makes me think of one of your early podcast episodes that I really identified with around energy sickness. And you use an example in there of an early reading you had where you just had so much was coming in and the sitter just kept asking questions and you went over what you had set as your limit for a reading. And that made you really sick. How did that teach you about holding that boundary?
Yeah, when your health is impacted, you're someone who's had to live with persistent health for a long time. I've only had intermittent experiences with it, and I'm here to just raise my hands to people who are operating in the world with persistent health because it is not easy. When I had that experience, it was rooted in people pleasing and it was rooted in fear. I just didn't know how to say no. We don't need to go into trauma and why that might be the case for some people, but there's a reason why people please. And it is rooted in safety and psychological safety. And so in balancing that, and before I was truly empowered in my mediumship, I just worked to sickness because one, she was the first person who ever paid me for a reading. It was $50 she handed me. I was like, oh my God. Even my first paid readings were only $20. So $50 to do a 90-minute reading was exceptional. Just unheard of. I didn't know she was going to pay me till after, but I respected her so much. She was fancy, she was wealthy, she was really famous. My mentor really admired her, therefore I did. I was intimidated in a lot of ways. So a lot of my journey and lessons around this were really learning how to stand in my power and my mediumship, and that took some time and that took a lot of experiences, but that first experience was rooted in people pleasing at the core, and actually we discuss it on the show quite a bit because cedar ended up being such a big teaching for me because of this energy sickness. It actually brought me a lot closer to my culture in so many ways, so it's not something I would ever wish away. We need to have these experiences to figure out our boundaries, right? We don't know what they are usually till they're crossed. But yeah, I've never done that again. And I am someone, when I smoked for 17 years, I quit once. I am not someone who will willingly, unless it's really unconscious behavior, willingly put myself in crazy discomfort. You know what I mean? So I'm always going to pick my energy over other people's now.
And it's funny thinking back to those early days as well, because I'm guessing that you have no memory of this because it would have been such a probably a small blip for you, but that boundary holding, I remember, it was early days of my development, spiritual development, and I don't think we had even had our mentorship session yet. And I had like pulled some cards and something aligned, and it felt so magical to me. And I like messaged you, and it was this big, long, rambling stream of consciousness about how, I'd pulled these cards and it was so exciting. And, I look back now and I have like secondhand embarrassment for my young self, my young spiritual self. But you sent me back a very lovely message. It was like very encouraging, but it was very brief. And I knew from that message that you were very kind, you were very supportive, you were excited to meet me, but also that I was asking you for I was taking your free time by asking you to respond to that message. And that was maybe because I'm also a people pleaser. I was like, read that message I think very accurately. Somebody else maybe might not have, but I really respect that boundary that you held as well, because you were supportive of a new client, but you didn't go over the top trying to gain my business, or it wasn't about the bottom dollar. It was about energy output. And I'm sure you rightly knew that if you engaged deeply with me in that moment, there was going to be endless emails from me about very exciting things, right? And you probably had some of that experience already.
Oh yeah, girl. Yes. If you give an inch, they take a mile sometimes, right? But I appreciate you reflecting back. I think now that you're helping me write my book, you know that I'm not much of a writer either. But you're right. This is something that comes natural to me, and I think it comes up in my astrology. Cancer, North Node, Capricorn, South Node. Like that's where I think this kind of plays out a lot. But people will always say like you're nurturing, but you're not mothering. Right? Like I am very nurturing person, that I'm innately nurturing. It's just my nature. I'm a 3-degree Virgo, but I'm not a mother. I'm not going to take responsibility for a lot of people's stuff and what they do and what they don't do. And that's my own personal boundary, right? If I was trying to save everybody or be everything to everybody, I mean, even just doing that for our partners can exhaust us. Can you imagine doing that for freaking everybody, right?
It's very, very, very true. Especially when you've got kids at home that you literally have to mother. To have to do it for everyone, you need to have that awareness. And honestly, I think that the best mentors don't have that mothering instinct, because you need to like push them out in the world. And the last thing mothers want to do is let their littles go out in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I honestly, part of my integrity is around being as honest as possible about the shit that I'm navigating and working through, because I'm not trying to save you from doing what I did. But we cannot repeat each other's stuff all the time if we're more transparent about it. We'll all have our own stuff that we navigate. But if you cannot repeat my things over and over again, and I could be as transparent about it to save you, then that's how we evolve, because then you'll go experience new hardships and evolve those. And I think that that's actually how we're going to like evolve and get out of our cycles, right? So that's my intention too, is like not to save people, but let's not keep on this hamster wheel.
I'm curious because, you were still working from your kitchen table when I met you. Where did you start to see the need to develop integrity within your work?
I think for me, I think it comes naturally, admittedly. Like even different jobs I had before I was a medium, if I wasn't happy, I didn't stay. Right? Like I had that much integrity for myself that like I wouldn't just take things because of the bottom dollar. I didn't stay in relationships because they were financially safe at the risk of homelessness. Like I think I've always innately have been like that, but it was when people started reflecting back to me like, oh, I love that you do that, or why do you do this, that I was starting to see the things that I do in my business that might be rooted in strong ethics or integrity. But I think I've always been a bit like that. But I did have an experience really early on, and this is more around like that mentorship dynamic, which I think is the majority of my work, truly. I'm definitely in my mediumship season, like with the show, but like I think I've always been training to be a mentor of some kind. So a lot of my woundings and the things that ruptured my spiritual experiences were rooted in that mentorship mentee dynamic, which I think helped me become a healthier mentor and space holder. Not perfect, right? Not perfect. There's things that I've had to repair and take accountability for, but because of these experiences I had, I wasn't against that. My earliest experience was around my second mentor. That was my first time studying online. Actually, I didn't even know you could study online before this point, and I had found her through a podcast. She was one of the only mediumship podcasts out there, and I really liked what she was talking about. It was like things that I thought about that I hadn't heard anyone say before. And so I did end up securing her for about an 8-week mentorship experience. And admittedly, I counted this to being my first ever online learning experience. Every session was like a little bit weird. I really admired her. She did say a couple things to me that really shifted my perspective. She was the teacher who said, Danielle, if I tell you nothing else, please just lighten up. And I'm like, that stuck with me. And that stayed with me as a beautiful teaching. And I am somebody who will go through experiences and try to extract the higher learnings from them, right? This is one of those higher learnings that I had from this. But it was at our 6 out of 8 session that she had somebody come sit for me that she had picked. And it was just a really uncomfortable situation. And it was like, I felt, and I'd been in situations like this before in a practice arena where the other person doesn't want you to do well. They're not very supportive. There might be a little bit of comparison, or I don't know what the root is. I don't want to try to make assumptions around that, but you can feel the non-positive intent, right? Like it's rooted in it. You can feel it. And as people who are aware of energy and empathic, we can feel intention. That's one of our magic tricks, right? And so I actually said out loud, which took me a lot of courage in front of my mentor, and I said it to my sitter, I don't think that you want me to do well. Wow. And then my mentor went like, oh my God, and she hung up, disconnected all of us. And then I was just kind of like, didn't know what happened. And she sent me an email, sorry, we're going to look at this. Like, I think you were right. I'll see you next week. We'll do a makeup session, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She tried to make it right. And I mean, it was a lot of money for me. It was paying in American dollars as a Canadian. As you know, it's not easy out here in these streets. And so it's, I wanted to finish the course of it. And it was kind of like a really kind of odd experience, but I really chalked it down to, just this person not wanting to do well. That's not uncommon in the mediumship space, unfortunately. It's not common at spirit school because of the way that I walk in life, but it is common in the mediumship space. So it was actually like a couple months later, she had sent a newsletter out saying that she had found Jesus and that she felt mediumship was a satanic path and that she was disengaging from the space, right? I had a major freak out. I was like, excuse me? And I messaged her. I was like, I'm so confused right now. And we had a couple exchanges and it was very polite. And I said to her, if you're not going to continue your podcast, I'm going to continue it because we need to continue this conversation. And I actually got her permission right there and then to start Spirit School, which was inspired based off of the conversations that she was holding on her podcast, because it was about psychic stage fright and like overcoming like like the things no one else was talking about. And she only had 8 episodes and I was like, we need to continue. And that's when I started Spirit School. But the kicker was a year later, I came across, just the algorithms being what they are, her testimony of her Jesus experience. And I ended up watching the whole thing and it's public. And I was so devastated. I'm not going to cry, but I was so devastated in listening to the testimony that the timing of her experience with Jesus was 2 months before she took me on as a client.
Wow.
And that she had shared in this testimony, because 2 years had passed between I was her client and all this, right? Went down, that she had said, like, I had to just keep earning money to like stay alive while I was like figuring out like what to do and how to unpack this. And so it was validating to me that like I could feel that lack of integrity. I could feel it from session 1 to onwards, but I never would have thought a mentor would do something like that. I never would have thought that somebody would get into this type of work for money or for wealth And that really impacted me. You know, there was a time shortly after that my mental health was struggling, because trying to be everything to everybody. Hello, I had 2 kids under 3 at this time, with a husband who was not very supportive of this path, plus a full-time job in a career, First Nations healthcare, that I was really passionate about. And I had this moment where I was like, I had 11 bookings ahead, and they were all prepaid, and I just said, I can't do readings right now. I have nothing left in the tank. And I emailed everybody and I said, you know, I'm kind of going through some things right now. I just need to take some space for myself, and to give myself the space, I'm going to have to give you back your money and just let you know when I'm rebooking. And everyone was like, no, just keep the money. Just like, let me know when my appointment is in the future. But like, my ethics were like, that felt like an anchor to me. It felt like I owed 11 people something, and I needed to free up space for my own like mental health. And so I said, no, this is for me. I have to send you guys this back. I promise you, you will be the first to know when I open up again. Because I mean, I think my wait list was 2 years at this point. It was insane, because I was only doing like 2 days of mediumship a month, right?
Right.
And I was like $50-$60. So I gave back everyone's money. I didn't have a lot of money back then, but it felt good. It's what I needed. And when I was ready to work again, I opened up my sessions. I emailed them first, and all 11 booked in again. Right. And I increased the price after they booked in. I honored that price that they originally booked in. And once they booked in, I increased the price, because that was part of that energy imbalance. Right.
Yeah.
But because of that experience, I felt really, and I seen it a lot in the business mentorship space, not so much in the psychic space, but a lot of like lack of integrity when it comes to money in this space. And like, that's just one example. And that's why I made that decision. And it was beneficial for me.
Where do you think that spiritual bypassing comes in with integrity? Because I think that the two overlap quite easily sometimes in this space. And one of the things, you know, I do have, and I struggle with this myself, I do have a belief that things happen for a reason. So, you know, I think, okay, well, those 11 people, say they didn't get their reading, say, you know, you had to refund them and you never started doing readings again, they didn't get their readings. To me, I would have been like, okay, well, you know what? There was a reason for that. Maybe they weren't meant to read with you. Maybe they were meant to have that experience with a medium in this lifetime. But how do you walk that line of telling yourself that to get away with something? So like, if you didn't have the integrity and you're like, well, I guess like, I'm just going to do what I want, because that's how this is supposed to unfold. That's what's meant to happen. How do you walk that line?
It's all rooted in intention. What's the impetus for this? What's the origin of it, right? When I gave back that refund, the intention was to give myself the space I needed to get well again. I can't do shit if I'm not well. And so it's like, everyone's better served. This is a decision that collectively helps us all, right? It's like, yeah. And so I think it's just intention based.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of looking at it. And definitely I'm going to sit with that, because that's something that I've thought about often for myself, like how it, because there's so much that I want to lean into in life with this is how it was meant to unfold. And so many big things, not just when it's easy and comfortable, but, you know, with losing people in my life or different things like that. I truly believe it. But then I also worry, am I using this to give myself an easy way out for things? And so I love that idea of asking, what is the intention?
Yeah, and am I in integrity and alignment with this intention? You know, there are times and examples like where I have made decisions where I've been like, is this rooted solely in integrity? Like, am I willing to pay the consequence of this choice? And sometimes I've still chosen it, because you have to do a check and balance. It's like, what's the cost? It's all cause and effect. So like, I have this ability because of my psychic work, right? Like, if somebody came to me and said, you know, I'm thinking about this decision, the first thing I do is I open up usually about 3 paths, and I walk down each path and I kind of see what comes up on each, like what's the potential, what's the resistance. You know, so I will do that for myself, and I'll be like, okay, here's the choices and consequences. And I have to make decisions based off of that. But I will say that one thing I think I'm good at compared to maybe how I was before is I will prioritize myself first. I will, if it's a chance between, are they going to be upset or am I going to be upset? I will choose me every time and call me selfish, but it's the only way that I think I can sustain doing this for a long time.
Does that not also overlap with parenting with integrity then? Because you also need to be available to be a healthy parent, a healthy partner, a healthy daughter to your parents who also live with you. There's integrity in your work, but then there's also, we have to hold integrity in so many areas of our life. So is that where that comes together?
Yeah. I mean, even KJ, we're in junior high now, and she's coming up with these things. And I have to be honest with her. I said, KJ, you're my first. I'm like, we are going to have to figure this out together. We are going to figure this out together. And I think that's being an integral parent. I'm not going to pretend as an overlord I have all this shit figured out, because I absolutely do not. And I think in my parenting, my number one priority is having a good relationship with my kids. And I think that takes a lot of honesty, even if they might lose a little bit of innocence. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah. I have to really kind of balance that as well. I think too, I was thinking about this because I'll be talking about integrity as the first class topic for the declaration in 2 weeks. And I was thinking about, like, I'm going to focus on it about integrity in the spiritual space. But really, if we look at life, I like looking at life as an astrology chart, 12 houses, 12 areas of life. There is no fucking way that we're walking 100% in integrity in all 12 areas of life, right? Like, we're not saints, right? We're not saints. And I think it's important to, like, not be high and mighty and, like, martyr-like and just, like, acknowledge that. Like, there are certain areas of my life that I am not as honest and outspoken about as I am about my spirituality. But I think that that's just part of my destiny, and that's part of my passion and my work and my calling. But you know me, you know where Chiron sits in my in my chart. There are certain areas of my life that I might not be walking as integrity with as I am over here. And that's the truth.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I can see, as with anything in these, like, spaces that become strangely competitive, especially with, like, our online presences nowadays, and we can do so much comparison and all of that, I can very easily see integrity becoming a piece where it's like, well, I walk with more integrity than this person does, or becomes like a,
it'll be like that trauma informed, like, of 2022.
Exactly. I'm more trauma informed than you are. But yeah, I can totally see that becoming a piece. What was it that, like, really inspired you to teach the declaration? Because I mean, the coursework is very unique. I mean, not only do we not see this conversation happening a lot, from a female-led perspective in podcasts, I don't think that this coursework is happening, especially not female-led.
Yeah. Indigenous-led too, right? Because, like, the perspective I kind of bring in is a bit more holistic. But, I honestly haven't looked if anyone else is doing this, to be honest with you. I was just seeing if there's any inspo I can get from, like, great minds on the topic of integrity, only to find, like, male ministers talking about it. So I was like, okay, our voices are needed out here in these spaces. It's something that people have asked me to talk about, and I think because it comes a bit maybe more natural to me, it's harder for me to teach things that come really natural to me. Like mediumship, I can teach it so easily because I struggled with it. I had to learn the nuances of it. I had to develop up. I'm not what some would say a natural medium or born medium. It's like I trained, I developed, I did the vulnerable work. But when it comes to, like, how I walk in life, that is what people look up to. It's, like, harder to kind of unpack, to be honest with you. So I look to these kind of, like, spiritual ruptures that happen in my life that tend to be the impetuses of change. So I did have an experience with, healer that I trusted for many years, considered a friend, supported each other's work for a long time. And I just had this kind of, like, this rupture that happened where, I did something that clearly upset them. And the response then was to weaponize the vulnerable things that I have disclosed in my healing sessions to try to hurt me or hurt me as much as I hurt them inadvertently, obviously not intended. But you know, their feelings were their feelings. And so I started thinking about, like, you know, this is somebody who's like been around a long time, respected, I vouched for, and to see the lack of self-awareness or spiritual maturity or the ability to look outside the wound before responding. I was like, I thought we would kind of like be here. I was like, but maybe we just don't have like the language for it, or I don't know. It just shocked me. It absolutely shocked me. And it had to make me look, whenever I have these experiences, like, where have I behaved like this in my life? Like, where does this wound come up for me? Because we all have our kind of triggers. But I think the big wounding point for me was around, you know, really just trying to weaponize my private disclosings to hurt me. That intention, right? The intention superseded like even the action for me. But there were signs, because, and this is something I teach in the declaration, no spoilers here, but I mentioned it last year, but like every time I would have a session, like whatever we talked about would be the next content topics, right? And so even though it was anonymous, I felt like I was being like extra monetized off of, or like double dipped off of, or my experiences were being marketed with. And you know me, I'm kind of the anti-influencer in a lot of ways. It's like I didn't consent for my personal experiences to then become your content. And that kind of bothered me for a little while, but I guess business is business. There's a lot of people that use their sessions to promote their businesses, and I don't think that's inherently unethical. But yeah, it definitely rubbed up against my own integrity. So when we're talking about the declaration and I'm like looking, okay, like how can I declare to spirit, and that's really what my declarations are, to the spirit world who trust me with this work, who trust me with my clients. I came up with one around spiritual maturity, which is understanding that so spiritual maturity is understanding that spiritual work is about service and not power. I'm committed to creating laterally kind spaces where personal wounding is not projected in our work. Right? So having that awareness, like if you're triggered, remove yourself. Mm-hmm. Maybe like work through it with all the tools that we teach and preach before you behave as you do, because those choices have consequences energetically and real world. Right? So, yeah.
It's so interesting because I've always considered with the tarot readings that I do, I've always held myself to a standard of like a psychologist or a counselor, right? So it's confidential. I don't share the information that comes up with anyone. It's if I were to use, feedback or wanted to use an example that came up in that, I would certainly ask for their permission, even though it's still going to be anonymous, if I were going to put it out into the world. And I see it, and it's so interesting because that is a regulated space where if you went to a counselor and they used your personal information to wound you or to do anything like that, even, I've one friend who's a criminal psychologist, and so she has to work with so much integrity and is often disappointed because she'll go to a yoga class and she'll love it and she'll go for 5 years, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in that's a client. She can't go to that yoga class anymore. She removes herself. She doesn't acknowledge, she doesn't ask them to go, nothing. She just stops going the very next week. I have my cousin is a teacher. We get together every Friday. She'll often tell me about how her week has been. She teaches littles, and never does she tell me personal details. Never does she tell me names. Never does she share any. She holds herself to a high level of integrity with the confidentiality of the classroom because she's working with children. So it's interesting to me because in the mediumship world, there isn't a regulation. There's no legal repercussion to any of this. And so to me, that means that we have to be held to a higher standard.
Absolutely. And, thank you for bringing in those examples. Absolutely. And what I was going to say around that is, it is a declaration in those ways. It's like there is no one checking us. I have an example of a case that's very public with a medium. It's actually, I found out about it through a lot of my different clients, and I use this as an example of somebody who is like, has been proven to be fraudulent and rip people off. They are a legit medium. They have proven themselves many times that their mediumship is real, but their business practices harmed a lot of people, thousands of people. And there were Better Business Bureau complaints, and there were articles written, but they're still operating as a business. They're still booked and busy. There really is no real world consequence. And that's how come I think doing things like the declaration, or getting clear on your values and like where are you walking on them, even when nobody's watching, right? That real integrity piece, it's more about like the energetic exchange of being in integrity. I can't help but think like the uncommon success I've had, it's not unheard of, but it's not super common. I really do feel in a lot of ways that the spirit world trusts me with a lot of people. They trust me with a lot of money. They see how I spend my money. They see where it goes. They see that the wealth is shared. They see I'm not like some crazy like hoarding, though if you look at my background, please don't. It's like the money's on the walls. Not quite like that. I'm a fancy girl, right? But I share what I get, and I share in various ways. If I can't donate cash, I donate time or my resources. And so I think like when it comes to putting yourself at a standard, because there is no collective standard, and I really don't think there should be, because truthfully, like where there is regulation, there are people left behind. Mm-hmm. Because of systems and structures that are not accessible for all, right? And so I'm not for regulation because of these reasons. So I think it's really up to us to get clear on this shit and like walk it and model it. And that's the only way we're going to make changes. I'm so tired of talk. It's like you just got to actually model it, because I have countless examples of people who talk a good game, and when you get inside, it is not an integrity. So many. And this is kind of what I go into the declaration. So it is up to us to like be the change, if you will, or signify these changes. So yeah, hopefully that answers.
It 100%. And I do agree about the barriers to access when something becomes regulated, right? We hold a lot of emotion, and in our work we hold a lot of personal details, and we hold a lot of influence around, people will ask like, what does my future hold? What's coming for me, or what am I going to do, or what's going to happen? How do you handle that? I don't want to say pressure, because it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels more like a gift to be able to offer this. But how do you handle that weight or that responsibility of those questions with integrity?
Can you repeat that last thing? Like, what questions are people giving me?
So questions around like, what does my future hold, right?
Right.
There's the opportunity to say, well, your future holds that you're going to come and work for me for free. Or,
and there are people who do that.
Obvious. Exactly.
The Twin Flame documentary. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the Twin Flame documentary? Like, everyone was working for that couple for free, right? Yes. No, it does happen. And hashtag not a cult, right? That's what we keep saying. Hashtag not a cult over here. I think that's why, and that's what I stress in the declaration. Like, that's why it's like ultra important that we do this integrity work, because a lot of the harm we could potentially cause won't be intentional, right? We have to actually think about all these things. And it doesn't take long in being a professional reader to really understand that people will listen to you and they will do what you say. And so you actually have to be really in integrity of how you deliver things, really clear on your discernment on what you're bringing through, because let's face it, this is an art form. It's not a science. It's never going to be exact. You have to like learn to be incredibly accountable. Now, I am someone who is currently healing. My current heal that shit is I do tend to feel over responsible for people sometimes and outcomes. I can feel responsible, and I'm trying to like release a lot of that. It can feel heavy, and I think that you should be cognizant of that levity without having it be the driving force of your actions.
Definitely. I think it could really limit the work or the good that people can do if if they cut that out completely, right? If they're like, okay, well, I'm not going to go there because it feels too heavy.
Yeah.
And I think that
Well, that's the
goes for,
bypassing you talk about, right? There's so much of it. I mean, we can do a whole episode just on bypassing, and I'm here to tell you, just look at your shit and find a way to hold yourself in your center while you do it, because I am someone who can attest to you that if there's a lesson for you to be learned, because it's not just for you, it's for the people that you're here to serve as well, that lesson will follow you no matter what environment you put yourself in. So many people quit their jobs. They're like, oh, the unhappiness is related to the workplace. I'm like, the shit's going to carry with you, because we're in reciprocity with the world of energy all the time. It's always going to be a little bit of us, and it's always going to be a little bit of them. And so we have to have that awareness. We have to be able to slow down enough to like look at our shit and own our shit. And that's what we say in my house, even with my kids, like, own our shit, own it. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way to heal and move on.
And that personal responsibility, because there is a piece of integrity that falls on the sitter or the mentee, to be discerning themselves. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is your willingness to share. And I know one of the pieces that you've shared is how somebody who's coming into the spiritual world looking for a medium, looking for, something like that, you've shared how can they be more discerning? How can they sort of try harder to ensure that they're not going to be taken for a ride, or they're not going to somebody that's, fake, for lack of a fancier word for it. Do you want to speak to that a little bit about the how can people better protect themselves stepping into this world?
As a reader or as a sitter?
As a sitter.
As a sitter, okay, yeah, because I work for two audiences, so I'm like different answers as a reader versus a sitter. The declaration 100%. Is for the readers, by the way, the space holders. But for the sitters, like I always say, like one of the best ways that you can find your healers and people is going to be your referrals, like asking people who you know who had positive experiences. That does not guarantee you the best experience. I know even for my work, 10 different people will have, on a spectrum, what they would consider to be like a nailed it out of the park versus like, yeah, that was great. We noticed through doing the show that when people have a deeper need, my mediumship is a lot better. When people are just curious, it's not landing that great. Or if somebody gets like a ton of readings and doesn't really need it, right? So the person who really needed that reading and has a deep, deep need will have had a fantastic healing experience. Whereas the person who was able to pick up on some validating things, yeah, it's neat, it's cool, it was great. Yeah, they hit some things, but did it meet a need? So if the need's there, people are going to have a better experience. So that's the other tip. No matter where you're at, if you're investing money in a reading, build that need for your reader, because that's going to help them. What messages do you need to hear? Who do you need to hear from? Why do you need to hear it? How will it impact your life? If you do that work before a reader, and that reader is really attuned to the world of energy, they'll pick it up, right? And that's where I realize, like I've been saying for years, I'm a hard person to read for because my need isn't that great. And so a lot of the people who read for me, it does fall a little bit flat sometimes. And that's not just because of them, right? So I have to do a lot of extra work to kind of like build up that need. And I think that's the magic that happened on the show. And I said that to them. I'm like, it's because you're interviewing them. It's because you're like, I don't know where I'm going until that day. I don't know who I'm reading for, what the context is. I just show up and read. But they've done that work of building that need. And it was like this. Right? So I'm even considering, when I open up sessions again, going, like even having you or something go through applications and picking people for readings based off of their need, because that's so much more fulfilling for me, right? Just so much more fulfilling. And so, yeah, anyways, build a need, look at those different types of referrals. If there's any hesitation, trust that. trust that. Don't ignore it. You know how many orange flags I've walked right fucking through?
We all have. Like, oh, it's changing to red. It's changing to red. And I'm still going.
I can fix them. No.
Yeah. I remember you telling me this, and I had to prove it to myself, but has come up again and again. I know that you don't offer gift certificates for readings because the need isn't there.
So for as long as you've known me, right? But go on.
Yep. But yeah, as long as I've known you, and you told me, and I have had the exact same experience where a friend will have like an incredible reading with me, and my friend needs this, I'm gonna get them a gift certificate, and the friend shows up, and it's like making a doctor's appointment for your friend, and they're like, I don't know why I'm here. What do you do? Like, you're a chiropractor. Well, my back feels fine. My friend has a really sore back. Exactly, right? And so like, I'll do the reading, everything's validated, but it's just boring for both of us a lot of the time, because they're like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. I'm like, well, yes, because your life is great and everything's on track and you're totally fine. Yeah. So I say to people now, like, I will still for regular clients, I'll do a gift certificate, but I'll say, like, tell your friend to use it when they have a need. Don't book it right away. Because it's so true. And I had to, as in your mentor role with me, you told me the gift certificates don't work.
They're an imbalance of energy.
Yep. And I still had to prove it to myself, but you were right. And it's exactly that piece, that need.
And it's consent, right? Like, even going back to what we talked about a few topics ago, it's like using your, readings as marketing. That's not inherently unethical. And that's what I mentioned. There are so many different layers that you can incorporate into your spiritual practice that allow space for consent, like true reciprocal consent. And then you're good. Everything's fine. It's mutual. Yeah. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, what do you want me to say around that other than I will do the calling again, which is my business program. It's a great topic. And I want to say too, like, I had one of our collective members send her son to get read by me. It was a fantastic experience, and she paid for it and sent him. But it doesn't always work. I had another friend who purchased a reading for her friend, and the readings aren't as clear for whatever reason. I'm not her channeler for whatever reason. And so, just because I can help one person doesn't mean I can help absolutely everyone. That's how come I've been so adamant about organic growth in my business. I've tried for nothing. Everything that I have has been organic growth, word of mouth. You go to my survey in Spirit School, how did you find me? You got 10 answers up there. They're wildly different, right? It's very organic because it's important that you find like aligned people more than like volume. But there's a few things I found with gift certificates. They were great for cash injection and like whatever business standpoint that you want. But the truth is, like, I'm usually booked out a bit far. So people will have to reach out and then they have to wait a little while. I mean, my prices went from like 20, 40, 60, 75, 89, 99, 100, 111, 125, 150, 189, 199, 200, 225, 250. Right? It's like it goes up and up and up and up.
An auction.
One of my favorite songs is like this auctioneer sample song right now. So it's like, what do I do with the gift certificate? Even if it says use this within 6 months, which I mean, there's probably 3 spots in the next 6 months. What happens when you sell a gift certificate for 60 and they come back to you at the 250? It's just never truly rooted in consent or reciprocity, I feel. And in that way, the energy's always been a bit off. Same when I've done, and I do love giving my time as a way to give back. And like when people come to my company locally and ask for different auction items, giving a reading is actually pretty epic. But I mean, somebody bought one of my readings last year I've never heard from them. I don't know who they are. I didn't run the auction. So there's like, I owe somebody out there something, and that weighs on me. It's an energetic tax. It did help out somebody, but it's just not the best way to give back either. I mean, you just have to look at the world of energy. So my experiences with gift readings, they've always been a little bit off.
And I think, I was just going to say, it goes down to that piece too of leading your business from integrity and not the bottom line. Because you're right, gift certificates sell, they're great great for the bottom line. They're going to, give you a cash injection. But if they don't align with your integrity, because there's so many pieces of that, right? There's so many pieces that you just described where it's like, well, so one, the consent piece. Two, is it really fair to sell that and only have like 3 spots that person then might not be available for? Are you going to feel like you're, in your alignment when you're reading for a $60 gift certificate and you're now charging $250 because you've realized that your time and your energy have that value, right? Because you finally realized that. So there's so many pieces there. So I think I just like it as an example of holding true to that, leading with integrity and not finances.
And I think that that's a great question. And I also want to say that like the business moves that I have made that have been rooted in integrity also align with the level of privilege that I'm at as well, right? So when I first started, I had 2 days a month to do readings, and I had to it was unharmonious in my marriage to do that. So there was also a different weight and energy being exchanged. When I went full time, I wasn't as big of a stickler about that stuff because there was a little bit more availability. As I got more consistent revenue, I was able to add more ethics and integrity, which I think in my business around my pricing models. And there's still more I want to do around that. So I also want to acknowledge that some of the things I'm talking about is because I had the privilege to be able to do that, right? And so I have to acknowledge that because I talk about different things like pay what you can, or people get payment plans with no penalty with me. Not everyone can afford that type of generosity, and I want to be real about that too. But the more that I get, the more I try to give back, the more I try to be more generous with everything. But that has changed based off of part-time work, full-time work, what the family needed from me, and how much privilege I had in my life too.
And that is, the transparency there is so important. I had a conversation recently with someone around that classic saying where it's like the moment you think you don't have time to rest is when you need it most, and just like how entitled that saying is, because
rest is a privilege, honey.
Rest is 100% a privilege. And you're going to tell like a single working mom that like, oh, you're telling me you don't have time to rest? Well, now you better take it. That just isn't an option. The same with, I don't know what year it was when manifesting got really popular, and
2019 to 2022.
There you go.
I study cults, everyone. I study cults.
Thank you. And that idea that like, you're just going to tell somebody, oh, I manifested this lifestyle that I have, that girl wash your face woman who said, oh, I just wake up earlier than everyone else, and that's how I have all of this.
Was she the same scrubbing toilet lady? Was that the same one? Yeah. I mean, that kind of woke people up from that mindset. That whole situation really woke people up from that genre of girl power, right?
Exactly. And how uneven it was, and how like really like rooted in colonialism it was. Yeah. It wasn't, that is not available to everyone.
I think that was at the height of cancel culture too. Like that going down. Like that was like peak case study.
Peak everything.
Peak, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that transparency is, I think if I were to reflect back to you, your greatest integrity would be the transparency in your business. And that's what I love about your coursework and having taken your courses is the personal stories you share and your storytelling ability, because it's so relatable. Yeah. It's not a do this because I tell you to. It's a here's what I did, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's what I'm still learning, so that we can all feel comfortable making mistakes and learning and moving forward.
Thank you. It's been reflected back that transparency, and how it's been said to me by different Indigenous people that's a decolonization practice as well. Like being transparent, and the language that they use is bringing people with me on my journey, like fully. Like if you're in the collective, there's nothing you miss. Like you get full life access there, right? And so I think it's important, and it helps me. Like people are like, you're so vulnerable, that must be so hard. I'm like, no, having a filter is hard for me. Having a filter is fucking hard for me, okay? Which is how come I needed a co-host, because you can draw a blank when you're like by yourself all the time. So going back a little bit, we have a whole class. I'm just going to list the classes, and then we can kind of maybe wrap up this first conversation and get people excited about our future conversations. But I do have a class on cultural sensitivity. So we have walking with integrity, the currency of trust, the mirror within, honoring diversity. That's where I bring in, some of these more cultural worldview perspectives, nourishing the self, and living your truth, creating your declaration. So, I do these sessions based off of storytelling. There's a private podcast for every one of these topics. We do a lot of reflection work and a lot of scenario brainstorming. Like, what would we do if? People can bring their real life examples. I will share mine, of course. I have some case studies that were really popular in the first round. And there's a workbook. You get a little completion badge, an ethics consideration badge if you complete all the different coursework. But this is a topic I'm pretty passionate about. But I will tell you, like, we had 150 people join the wait list in like a month. Like, this is a topic that is important to everybody else. We didn't even touch on social media in the spiritual space. I mean, we didn't even touch on that. And I can tell you that this is a topic that people really want to delve into. So I'm happy to hold space for this conversation for 6 weeks.
That space that you create for people to find themselves through mediumship and integrity and business practices and all the different courses you offer. I also have noticed that you have a lot of integrity with how you speak about your cultural connections. Mm-hmm. And what that path and that journey has been like for you. And I guess I'd like to end on your thoughts on the integrity piece of walking that spiritual reconnection while being transparent about your business, while being transparent about your practices. Like, you have a lot going on.
I do.
It must be hard to carry all of that at the same time. And I'm just wondering how it feels. Like, how does it feel when you make a mistake? Or how does it feel to be so openly vulnerable about all these different areas of your life at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of my reconnection to culture was through my 10 years at the First Nations Health Authority. I mean, it was some of the best years of my life. And I had a lot of teachings come through. I actually share in class 1, in podcast 1, a time where I stepped out of integrity. And I went against one of my cultural teachings and what repair looked like in that situation, and where there was impossible repair, right? What happens when there is no resolution, there is no repair. I share an example about that, but I think that it is the teachings that I've gotten from my reconnection journey that are always going to root my integrity in my own origin stories, my own whys. Like, what's the initiation of this? What's the impetus of this? What's the intention behind this? I do believe that is everything I learned in reconnecting to the culture. That is my guiding principle around that. And I also think transparency. There's not to say that people within the culture say like there's not gatekeeping. I don't get to live on reserve. I don't have those same dynamics that people who live on reserve have. My experiences are a lot different. So there's different dynamics around like lateral violence and lateral kindness that people on reserve will experience rather than off. And so through my reconnection journey at FNHA, I was called in a couple times. I put my foot in my mouth a couple times. I had to get corrected and humbled up. And I think that those experiences helped me humble up in my mediumship as well, right? Because it actually can't get worse than your own culture calling you in. But I respect it, and it's like, I get it. And I try to listen and do better all the time. But I will always consider things from that cultural perspective probably first. And spirit. What would you have me do, spirit, right? And I think that culture is inherently spiritual, like truly spiritual, personal spirituality, right? And I think that kind of like roots me as well.
That's beautifully put. And I think that's a perfect place for us to close off, because it really brings together all all the places where you need to live from integrity with, and how hard it can be, like you said, in the 12 houses and integrity in every single areas of our lives, and remembering that we're human and we're here to have a human experience and to learn while we're here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I mean, we made a bunch of notes and we just let the conversation go and it went everywhere we didn't have notes for. So maybe we'll just pick a big topic next time and just start talking. Me and Danielle would love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this topic? What have you seen? What are you curious about when it comes to this? How do you know when you're walking in integrity? And what do you do to course correct when you know that you are slightly walking off the path? Right? These are some big things to think about that will help you come up with your own spiritual philosophies and help you spiritually mature. So thank you, Danielle, for invigorating this convo, and we'll see you next week. We're doing weekly, aren't we?
We are.
Thank you for joining me on Spirit School today, friends. I am so grateful for this time that we spent together exploring the power of spirit, the depths of healing, and the magic of self-discovery. My hope is that each episode leaves you feeling inspired, empowered, and connected to the boundless energy of your own soul. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to take the next step on your journey by joining me in the Spirit School community. Inside, you'll find a vibrant space filled with like-minded souls, access to exclusive teachings, live mentorship opportunities, and the support to deepen your trust in your spiritual gifts while embracing your humanity. Visit myspiritschool.com to learn more and become part of this growing family of seekers and light bringers. Let's continue to co-create a rich life with spirit, love, and purpose together. Until next time, keep shining your light and walking your soul's path. Take care, my friends, and be well.